Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, my good friends, my brothers and sisters all over the world. At the time of recording this message, the list of people to be pardoned by President Donald Trump, who will soon cease to be the President of the United States of America, is not announced. I'm told that it will be announced any time now. I have no idea who all will figure in that list of people pardoned. But this idea of an outgoing president announcing pardon for a limited number of people makes me think. I don't have the authority to pardon anyone, but I have the right to think. And I believe that that's at least as important as the power to pardon. And in fact, I believe that thinking is more important than the power to do anything. Thinking is the most quintessential action. And this power is available to everyone. From the prince to the pauper, this is our universal entitlement. But unfortunately, not many people care to exercise it. Not many of us can become prime ministers and presidents, but everyone can think. You don't have to be acknowledged as a world leader in thinking, but you can simply be a thinking human being. And I have no doubt at all that thinking constitutes the banquet of life, the richness of life. I am as rich as my thinking is. And that is the joy of my life. That's also the freedom of my life. Now, the Malayalam word for a human being is Manushan. And the root meaning is who is a Manushan, who is a human being? A Manushan or a human being is one who uses his mind. In other words, one who thinks. The greatest privilege in this world is not to be a president or a prime minister. It is to be a human being. Think of your being a buffalo or a monkey or a snake or a rat or a worm. What a great thing it is. What a wonderful thing it is to be a human being. Why are we not excited about it? Anyway, that I'll say something more about it on another occasion, not today. Today, let's be focused on the presidential pardon. Now, some very basic things about pardoning. First of all, to be pardoned, the person or persons to be pardoned have to acknowledge that they have done something wrong. They also have to admit the wrongs that they have done. Furthermore, they have to feel sincerely sorry for the wrongs they have done. Finally, they also have to be willing to make reparations for the harms done or the losses caused through their actions. That's the common man's idea of pardoning. Now, without all this, a president, just before he demits office, signing a list of people to be pardoned is ridiculous. And in my opinion, it's high time for America to reconsider this prerogative of presidential pardon, which is bound to be horribly abused. Now, let me come to the second aspect of pardoning. It's only a person against whom an act of offense has been committed who can pardon. Suppose you have beaten somebody. I can't say that you are pardoned. Suppose you have beaten me, then I can say I pardon you. Because I am the aggrieved party, I am the one who suffered the loss. Who am I to say that you are pardoned when the offense you have committed is not against me? So, this idea that President Trump can forgive actions on the part of certain individuals who committed an offense against the state or against other fellow human beings willfully, repeatedly, is absolutely absurd. So that's the second point I want to make. The third point I want to make is this: who you pardon and why you pardon says a lot about you. Now, if you pardon people who committed violent acts to benefit you, then you are abusing the very idea of pardoning. If you're pardoning people who committed offenses because you inspired them to do so, you asked them to do so, then you're simply publicly stating your collusion in the acts of crime or violence against the state. So, in my opinion, pardoning of this kind amounts to a complete abuse of the idea and institution of pardoning. Now I come to my final point. I'll make this video brief, perhaps not so brief, because pardon is a very expansive subject. One can talk about it for hours together, but I should not test your patience. As I hinted a short while ago, the fact that I am pardoned becomes real only when there is an expressed intention on my part to turn a new leaf. Suppose I commit an act of offense, a crime, and I am pardoned. I have not expressed that I have not acknowledged my fault. I have not expressed regret. I am simply pardoned because somebody has some goodwill towards me or somebody feels obliged to pardon me. What will happen? I will commit the same offense again and again and again. The idea of pardoning, the healthy idea of pardoning or granting pardon to somebody, is to enable that person to make a new beginning. The light-hearted, cheap use of the idea of pardon has exactly the opposite effect. If I am pardoned for an offense I have done without my feeling sorry for it, without my willingness to make reparations for it, then what happens is I come to the conclusion that it's a smart thing to do the same thing, and I go on repeating my offenses. And in this context, or in this abuse of the idea of pardon, great harm is done to me under the guise of helping me. Instead of leading me out of this inhuman pattern of behaving in this manner, I'm simply confirmed deeper and deeper in the very pattern of practicing the offense. So I'll become a repeated offender. And I repeat the offense I have committed. And this is something that no sane society can afford to tolerate. Now, in this context, let me say something more about pardon. And this is actually the most important thing I want to share with everyone, particularly with those who have a spiritual sensitivity to understanding this most important spiritual idea of pardoning. That makes me want to make a distinction. Pardon can be approached from two different perspectives. One is the legal idea of declaring somebody as absolved or as pardoned. The other is a spiritual idea of forgiveness. In the legal idea, the moment a competent authority comes to a conclusion and declares that so and so is pardoned, the matter ends. What that person does thereafter is nobody's concern. Nobody holds him to account. Not so in the spiritual idea of pardoning. Now, suppose a bishop, an archbishop, or a pope, or a Shankaracharya, or a mufti, or a jathedar declares that Valsan is pardoned. The matter will not end there. If it's a spiritual understanding of the wonderful provision of forgiveness. Now, in the spiritual context, life is not arbitrary. This is where even Christians, especially Christians commit a mistake. The difference between the Christian idea of offense or sin and the Hindu idea of offense and sin is that in the Hindu idea there is a causal connection which is hard to break. That is cause effect. If you do this wrong, you will suffer this consequence. That's the idea of karma. You accumulate karmic debt. I'm not an expert in Hindu philosophy or spirituality, but these are things one has read about. And therefore, it is not easy for a Hindu to commit an offense. Go to a pujari, a pandit, or a Shankaracharya, or whoever, and say, please pronounce forgiveness on me, and I can live my life merrily thereafter. In the Hindu worldview, in the Hindu spiritual worldview, you have to live out the consequences of your offenses. And in fact, the consequences of your offense will endure into the next birth, into the birth thereafter. That's a karmic accumulation of debts over births. This is a very scientific, if you like, a scientific idea of the cause and effect relationship between sin and the sinner. But the Judeo-Christian, particularly the Christian tradition, is different from this. Christians believe, and I believe wrongly believe, that you have committed a sin and your priest says your sins are forgiven, and the priest says, I'm doing it on behalf of Jesus Christ. What relationship the priest has with Jesus Christ is nobody's concern. The priest says your sins are forgiven, you go home and you are happy. No consequence thereafter. Suddenly you are like a baby who has been given a thorough wash. Quite frankly, I've been a priest. I believe this to be downright stupid. Downright stupid. And this is the reason why the Christian community is sinking into abysmal depths of ethical aberrations. Because in this very unfortunate and baseless teaching of easy forgiveness and the blotting out of consequences just because a priest or a bishop says your sins are forgiven, because of this, Christians have lost their sense of fear about offending. There's a reason why aberrations abound in the Christian community today. Not only that, there's a reason why aberrations do not shock Christians, because we have made light of it. A bishop rapes a nun, so what? He'll be forgiven. A priest or two priests and a nun kill a fellow nun, so what? They can be forgiven. A bishop cheats people to the tune of crores and crores of rupees, bogusly promising them medical admission, so what? One word, that's enough, forgiven. My dear fellow Christians, let me ask you this. Do you really believe this to be true? I'm afraid not. I'm going to make a shocking revelation about my life. When I was a school student, I had some friends, I had very few friends, and in those days we used to go and attend temple festivals. Because there was no television, we didn't even have a radio. The only entertainment used to be the festivals organized in local temples, because temple festivals always meant variety entertainment programs or cultural events, and we were all very fond of it. So, 4 or 5 of us one day attended a local temple festival, and the variety entertainment program that night proved to be a dismal disappointment. So, one of my friends said, "Oh, let's do something adventurous." So people said, "What?" "Well, let's go and steal some tender coconuts from a church compound nearby." Now, I was young, probably I was in class 9, I think. And I joined school very early. I joined school at the age of 4 because my maternal grandmother was the headmistress of the primary school. So I was admitted, and that was the way things happened in those days. So I was only 13 at that time. So I tagged along. And of course, I couldn't climb a coconut tree, but there were people who could do it. And in the process of climbing, one of them fell down. And this created a noise. People woke up, there was a hullabaloo, and we all ran away, and that person was caught. And it became a great sensation, this, that, and the other. My dear friends, let me say this to you. Even today, I remember that event and my heart burns with shame. Shame. Well, I can justify it by saying that after all, that was a prank played by schoolboys. No, the fact is it was theft. It was downright theft. And even today, I pay the price for it. My conscience burns. My inside fumes. Oh, you will say, "Oh, then you don't believe that Jesus Christ can forgive?" Yes, Jesus Christ can forgive. But forgiveness does not mean that what you have done ceases to exist. It has to play its way out. Why do I emphasize this? I emphasize this because we have to be very careful about what we do. Let's not presume on God's unlimited mercies, unending mercies. Let's not cheapen it. One thing I believe very firmly, and that is, yes, you will be forgiven, but the consequences of what you have done will never be abolished. Then you will ask me, what does forgiveness mean? Forgiveness means freedom from, liberation from your subjection to that pattern. That's what forgiveness is. So that you don't go on repeating the same thing. Forgiveness does not mean that what you have done ceases to exist. This is absurd. This is ridiculous. How can this ever be? So, all this does not matter to a politician. For him, what matters is that he is about to demit office and he has to oblige those who were his supporters, those who were part of his herd, whom he used without any conscience. Friends, what offends me most is the projection of Donald Trump as a Christian. Millions of Americans support him because he has somehow fabricated an image of himself as an evangelical Christian. If Trump is the representative of Christianity, my bap, I'm not a Christian. Period. A man who has no qualms in lying. A man who has no qualms in inciting organized violence. A man who can jeopardize the destiny of a nation to fulfill his vanity, his lust for power. A man who has no hesitation in abusing religion to bolster his selfish interests. To me, is anything but Christian. I would say anything but human, leave alone Christian. And it pains me that millions of my fellow Christians do not have the spiritual discernment to understand that this is not Christianity. This is the very desecration of Christianity. What justification Trump has or does not have is not my issue. The issue is that one has to conduct oneself with a sense of responsibility in the public domain. Let me conclude with a personal experience again. When I was the principal of St. Stephen's College, there was a huge conspiracy to unseat me because I would not oblige the rich and the mighty. Before I became principal of the college, the elite, the socio-economic elite, the political elite had a right to have their children smuggled in via the back door of the college. There was an unwritten reservation policy for the rich and the powerful. I changed all that and I created a reservation for Christians. I also created a reservation for the poorest among Christians, Dalit Christians. This turned the whole world against me. So a huge, concerted, orchestrated conspiracy was hatched against me to unseat me in less than 3 days. That was the declared intention at that time. So various strategies were used. I will not go into all details. I'll only mention one. One strategy was to question my degree. What happened? The old boys, the Alumni Association of St. Stephen's College is easily the most powerful alumni network in India, without a doubt. It has influence at all levels. So they managed to have an alumnus of the college appointed as a secretary of the UGC. Secretary UGC is a very powerful office. After the chairman, it is a secretary, actually the secretary who runs UGC. The chairman is a kind of ceremonial figure. He has authority, I'm not saying that he does not have, but it's the secretary who runs the show. What did he do? He gave a false statement to the media that my degree was not valid. Now that statement was based on a frightful and I believe deliberate misunderstanding of the provisions in the UGC Act of 1954. How it amounts to a misunderstanding or misrepresentation is a complicated thing. I will not explain it now. What did I do? The moment I saw this in the newspaper, I was in no doubt that my degree was 100% valid. And I was in no doubt that this was part of a conspiracy. But I knew one thing, that according to the law of the land, in India, the ultimate authority to decide the validity of a degree is UGC, University Grants Commission. And if UGC puts out an official press statement saying that my degree is not valid, on foundations that are completely bogus, that's a different issue. Should I or should I not continue as the principal of St. Stephen's College? It took me not even 1 minute to decide. I took a piece of paper and I wrote my resignation. I got into my car. I didn't even wait for my driver. I drove to the office of the bishop who was the chairman of the governing body. And I said, here is my resignation. He said, what? I said, yes. He said, can you wait? I said, no, I can't wait. Here's my resignation. I'm leaving. I'm not going to enter my office. And I left. I could have taken a stand, I could have gone to court, and I'm sure I was very confident I would win in the court. But in the judiciary being what it is, it would take time. And during that time, the name of my institution will be maligned. The office that I hold itself will be discredited. For my sake, I would not let that happen. I left. I came to Kerala. Then what happened? The university filed a complaint with the University Grants Commission that the university is discredited through this allegation by the secretary UGC that my degree is invalid, because after it's the university that gave me the degree. I did not make any complaint. I came away. I came back to Kerala. The UGC was forced to appoint an expert committee to look into the matter. And the members of the expert committee were all from outside Delhi, so that no influence could be exerted. A thorough, impartial inquiry done by a committee comprising 3 members. One was the Secretary of State, Chief Secretary of State. The second was a law professor from the Law Institute in Bangalore. The third I don't remember. And the committee came to a unanimous conclusion that there was nothing wrong with the degree. What happened? A UGC was forced to issue a second statement that the statement issued by the secretary to the media was wrong and malicious, and that everything was right with my degree, and the secretary UGC lost his job. That's what happened. In the entire history of UGC, there is not another instance of a secretary losing his job in less than 6 weeks. I could have dug my heels in and I would have said, oh, I'm a victim and I'm being, my office is being stolen from me. That's what Trump said. Stop the steal, stop the steal, stop the steal. What? Courts after courts, he filed about 60 cases. Courts after courts said there was nothing wrong with the elections. The states that certified these elections, some of them were governed by Republicans. And you go on making allegations that, you've been robbed, elections are rigged. Every competent authority comes to a contrary conclusion, and then finally you instigate a crowd. And then you sit and pardon, and you say that's Christian. This is ridiculous. You can't take it beyond this. So, my friends, yes, we must all believe in forgiveness. One of my favorite novels is The Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky. And in that, there's a discussion. There's a discussion on forgiveness. And Dostoevsky says that life survives on forgiveness. The alternative to forgiveness, he says, is either suicide or debauchery. If the scope or the provision for forgiveness did not exist, life would come to a standstill. After all, the old aphorism, the old adage says, to err is human. Everyone commits mistakes. All of us have committed mistakes. And life should not stop with the first mistake. Life must continue in spite of mistakes. But life must not continue with the repetition of the same mistake, because then also life cannot continue. Life comes to a halt. That is why this idea, this beautiful, very, very humane idea of forgiveness comes into being. Recognizing that we are human and therefore we err. And on the other hand, also recognizing that we need opportunities to make fresh beginnings. And therefore, my friends, I want to underline this. Without the explicit intention of making a new beginning, pardon does not make any sense. It's an abuse of pardon. And if it turns out that Trump abused this provision of offering pardon to people simply because they supported him or because they were his buddies, without looking into the merit of the case from a dispassionate point of view, he's not pardoning, he's abusing the provision of pardon. He is desecrating the idea of forgiveness, which is a very beautiful, profound, godly idea. Against that, I protest. We all must protest. So, let's wait and see who all makes the cut. Thank you.